is an efficient, highly effective way to prepare tender items like fish and poultry and highlight their natural flavors. Water vapor circulates around the food, providing even, moist heat. Beef and pork tamales are made up of 3 different layers: a moist masa dough, a tender meat filling, and a protective wrapping of corn husks. This layered package is perfect to illustrate the principles of steaming. Tamales require approximately 45 minutes to cook, so you'll need enough water to steam for that length of time. Add enough liquid to the bottom of the pot or steamer, cover, and bring the liquid to a boil. Place the tamales onto the steamer rack, seam side down. To ensure even cooking, food should be placed in a single layer, not touching one another or the liquid below, so that the steam can circulate freely. Once all the food is in the steamer, cover it with a lid tightly. Adjust the heat to maintain even, moderate heat. Since steaming is done in a closed cooking vessel, it can be difficult to gauge how long foods need to cook. Refer to your recipe to tell how long to steam food to the correct doneness. When you do check for doneness, remember to tilt the lid away from you as you open it so that the steam will vent away from your face and hands. Because of the wrapper and the high fat content of the filling, the tamales will stay moist. Steamed food should be cooked until they are just done, but not overcooked because they can easily become rubbery. Serve the food immediately or as soon after cooking as practical to offer the best flavor and appearance. Place on heated plates with an appropriate sauce.
Is steaming a cooking method for you? As you're about to see, it can be a lot more than just a plate of broccoli. Steaming is very flexible, which by that I mean it gives you a lot of different scenarios and it's very adaptable. I can take a small piece of broccoli and steam it in a 2-quart sauce pot. I could take 2 cases of broccoli, put them into perforated full-size hotel pans, put them into a commercial-sized steamer, still have the same thing. I can adapt the cooking technique based on the amount of food that, or the size of the product that I'm doing. The traditional bamboo stack steamers are another good example. So there's a lot of ways that you can achieve the steaming. Steaming is classified as a moist cooking method, and steaming occurs at actually a higher temperature than boiling. That's a result of once water is brought to a temperature above boiling, you create steam. It is unique into itself because of the high degree of temperature that it's done at, and the amount of moisture that's involved with this particular cooking process. The cooking liquid can be something as simple as water, or it could be some type of flavored liquid. A court bouillon, for example, something that's been flavored with mirepoix, wine or vinegar, herbs. It could be a fish stock or a chicken stock, depending on what you're steaming, but it should be something relevant and complementary to the item that you are steaming. I don't know that I would use straight wine all the time because of the tannic acid. And acid does get carried off in the vapor of steam, so that may give you a bitter flavor to the item that you're steaming. Not having enough water is a huge problem with steaming, especially when you're doing it on top of the stove. Recovery time. The amount of items that you try to steam in proportion to the amount of steam you're trying to generate in the pan is a problem sometimes. They overload the steaming pan and then don't have enough water in there, or the pan is too small so you don't generate a high enough steaming. You have to be careful if you start running out of water, because then what happens, because of the different iron and chemicals that the minerals that are in water, you'll get a very bitter or undesirable flavor that may start to be imparted into the food. You can scorch food with steaming. When the steamer gets dry, you can scorch it. When you interrupt that steaming process, okay, there's going to be a recovery time, so just adding more water to it sometimes may not solve the problem. You may end up with an off-colored vegetable, for example. I think in my personal experiences, I think steaming has a little higher degree of carryover cooking because of the high temperature that it's done at. So compensating for that a little bit, taking the item out a little sooner, knowing that it's going to retain that heat and have a carryover effect are some of the pitfalls. Common vegetables for steaming would be broccoli, asparagus, your greener vegetables. Cauliflower is very good. Eggplant would not be something I'd steam. Squash, zucchini, summer squash would be very acceptable. One of the things, the benefits of steaming, especially vegetables, it retains a lot of the vitamins and nutrients because the cooking process is so rapid, such a high temperature, not exposed to a lot of liquid, where there's not a lot of vitamins and nutrients being leached out of the product. So it is conducive to retaining more vitamins and nutrients. Items that I would recommend to steam, especially protein items, would be items that are naturally tender. White meats, poultry, fish that are white, lean, firm. Obviously you want something that's going to be able to cook evenly all the way through, but it's got to be naturally tender. Steaming will not tenderize protein like some types of cooking methods, example braising. One of the things you have to be careful with steaming is because it's done at such a high temperature, protein coagulates very, very quickly. And picking and choosing your items. So a high protein item like shrimp, you have to be careful how long you steam it. You can very quickly overcook a piece of shrimp because of the fact that the temperature of steam is much, much higher than boiling. I think the way you evaluate an item that's been steamed properly is it's going to be plump. It's not going to, its size and shape will not change because it is a moist cooking method, so you're not extracting liquid out of it. I also think that it'll be very moist on the outside, but it shouldn't be too wet. If it has a wet, soggy feel in the mouth and on your palate, that's not desirable for a steamed item. This is one cooking method that doesn't require any specialized equipment. If you want to get into a scenario where you're using a 3 or 5 quart pot to steam in, depending on what you're steaming, it could be something as simple as a rondeau with a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of water in the bottom. Placing a rack on there, but that rack has to be out of the water, so you might have to elevate the rack somehow. But you want to keep the item out of direct contact with the water. All you truly want is the steam to be what cooks the product. Then finding a tight-fitting lid without any gaps so you can trap that steam in there. The key there is everything has to be tight-fitting. You want as little amount of the steam pressure to be released as possible. It could be the bamboo stackable steamers where you might stack 4 or 5 on top of each other. That would be a scenario that you could use. Hotel pans, a 4-inch deep hotel pan on top of the stove with a rack inside, amount of liquid. Putting a smaller or shallower hotel pan on top of it could be an acceptable way of steaming. I have seen chefs who will cover vegetables that are going to be steamed with a damp towel. A professional steamer, by definition, could be a very large piece of equipment, stainless steel outside with a door that has a large gasket on it, giving you the ability to slide full sheet trays in, full-size hotel pans, perforated or non-perforated, and being able to hold multiple pans. Then the door would have a very heavy latch on it, and you would have a pressurized situation going on there once you set the button for steam. We also have an item out there now called a combi convection. It's a combination of oven and steamer, used a lot in commercial baking, which the process would be it can interject or inject steam into the oven during the baking process. One of the most important things I learned as a student here, and still constantly are reinforced as being an instructor is no matter what type of cuisine that you're cooking, there are fundamentals that do not change. Steaming as a cooking method is kind of unique to certain cuisines. Asian cuisine, they do a lot of steaming. Did not have a lot of experience with that in high volume situations. Most of my experience was when you have to make potato salad, 300 pounds of potato salad. Red skin potatoes, small B-sized red skin potatoes, into the steamer, cooked 2/3, 3/4 of the way, put into the dressing, allowing them to cool, continue to cook because they had the jacket, the skin on. That would be an example. Steaming halibut for 300 people, 400 people. Those are my experiences. Steamed chicken breasts. Making vegetable lasagnas, individual portions of lasagnas, for example, taking the raw pieces of pasta, cut into circles, layering my vegetables, putting my sauce on there, and then steaming those. Cooking the pasta and everything. That worked very, very well. Those are some of my experiences with steaming. Some unconventional methods, and I hesitate to use the word unconventional because Papillote is a classic way of steaming. Some people may refer to it as a combination style cooking method, but really in its pure form, you're putting something in a parchment paper bag, a piece of fish or vegetables. There's some type of liquid or pre-made sauce in there. The bag is sealed very tight, and then it's placed into the oven. That's baking. But what's going on inside the bag is steaming. When you talk about beef tamales or pork tamales, they're encrusted. It's a ground beef filling or pork filling that's highly flavored. It may be wrapped in corn husk, masa farina batter around it. So it's being insulated. The protein in there is being insulated, usually by a starch component. So you don't have that protein in direct contact with the steam. Steaming is very dangerous, especially with the commercial steamers. Allowing the steam to dissipate before you reach into the steamer to pull the pan out. Steam burns are very, very painful because of the high temperatures. So I've seen people reach into steamers too soon, as soon as they've opened the door, and then end up burning themselves. You can't really derive a sauce from the process of steaming. And since the characteristics of most of the protein items that you're steaming are very lean, high protein items, the rationale would be to serve a sauce that is fairly rich, for example, basic hollandaise or béarnaise sauce. So now you've seen, steaming is an extremely flexible and adaptable cooking method.